Ruiz from the Texas Upsilon chapter at the University of Houston downtown. Her presentation is Suspect Lineup Identification, Sequential versus Simultaneous. Liz, the floor is yours.
I would like for you to imagine something for me. For a brief moment, imagine someone has broken into your home. They are on top of you and they have a knife to your throat. And they tell you, if you move, I will kill you. So all you can do is study their face, and you hope that you don't die and that you can get to the police department and have them do a sketch, and you want to find this person. This is a true story. It actually happened. Jennifer Thompson was raped in the 1980s. She was a college student. A gentleman broke into her apartment. He put a knife to her throat and he told her, if you move, I will slash your throat and I will kill you. All she could do is study everything about his face to learn so she could go to the police, do a sketch, and find him. She did this. They did the sketch. They went out. They pulled some photos. She came in. She picked the suspect. Then they did a lineup. And she picked the suspect again. When she was picking out the suspect, the detectives told her, "Great job. It's the same one that you picked in the photos." So she felt like this sense of relief, like she really found someone who truly raped her. A few days later, actually 10 days later, they go to the courtroom. He is in the courtroom, and the attorney asks her, "Is your rapist in the courtroom?" She points to him, and she says, "That is the man who raped me. If he can get the death penalty, I want him to die, and I want to be the one to pull the plug." He got life in prison. His name is Ronald Cotton, and he was incarcerated. He maintained his innocence. He continued writing letters to attorneys. The attorneys finally went back into court, maintained his innocence. She again Jennifer Thompson pointed to Ronald Cotton and said, "That is the man who raped me." He then went back into prison. Now, what happens is during his time in prison, after 7 years, someone else comes into the prison that he has a cellmate, and he looks similar to Ronald Cotton, and his name's Bobby Poole. Bobby starts bragging that he's raped all these women. Well, they both work in the kitchen at the prison, and even the prison guards confuse Poole and Cotton, and they start calling them by their names. And he again calls his attorney and writes letters, and he says, "I know who raped Jennifer Thompson." So he again goes to the courtroom. They bring in both Bobby Poole and Ronald Cotton. Jennifer Thompson again goes in after 7 years, points to Cotton and says, "That is the man who raped me." Now Ronald Cotton goes back into prison and he gets 2 life sentences now. That's it for him. Well, what happens? Ronald Cotton starts watching the O.J. Simpson trial. He learns about forensic DNA. This happens in the 1990s, the early 90s. So he calls his attorney and he begs for another trial. There was one strand of semen left in the rape kit, one sperm. They did a blood test on Ronald Cotton, Bobby Poole, and Jennifer Thompson. They bring them back into court a 3rd time. This is now 11 years. The attorney asks again, Jennifer Thompson, "Is your rapist here?" She points to Cotton and says, "That is the man who raped me." The attorney says, "I am here to tell you that Bobby Poole is the man who raped you. We have proof. Forensic DNA is now to the courts, and we are going to be releasing Cotton." Well, so Jennifer Thompson became very upset, and Cotton got out, and Bobby Poole was now sentenced to 3 life sentences. So what does this tell us? what happened in the beginning? Well, Jennifer Thompson tries to go and pick out her rapist, and they go into a simultaneous lineup. A simultaneous lineup is all of them together in one group. A sequential is one by one. The live lineups, they really don't do that anymore. Back 100 years ago, that's where they really started doing the group lineups. And you know, this is a very long time ago. That's when all the simultaneous lineups, and you would literally go in and pick out the eyewitness would pick out their suspect. Well, after 100 years, psychological science has come into play, and they said there has to be something that we can do. So there have been some psychologists. One is Gary Wells. He's in Iowa, and he started saying, well, what if we start looking at suspects one at a time? What would happen? What would be the validity and the reliability? So he started testing, and what happened was they found that more eyewitnesses were able to pick in a sequential one-by-one photo the correct suspect than if they were shown in a group of photos. Because what happens, it's called false memory, false eyewitness memory, and you tend to start saying, okay, here's 6 photos, these 4 don't look like them, these 2 kind of look like them, and then you start trying to say, well, who looks more like it? And really there's no protocol. For 34 years, Gary Wells has been trying to get into the court system, and he was just able to go into it. They have not changed police protocol for over 34 years. There is no protocol when you send an eyewitness to pick a suspect. They can clap, they can cheer, they can say, well, here's 7 people. I noticed you stared at number 3 a little bit longer. Why don't you look at number 3 again? And it was a biased. It was not a double blind. It was single blind, because the detectives knew who really the suspect was. So what has happened is Gary Wells has tried to say, well, look, let's get some protocol going. Let's do double blind tests. Let's have the eyewitness come in, and the detective that knows who the perpetrator is, he does not sit in the room. Someone else that does not know who is the rapist or the person who robbed the store. And that way it's a double blind test, and they're not biased. We're human. We tend to, even though we don't think, we're trying to say, well, look at number 3 again. It's just, research has shown it's better to do double blind. So Gary Wells has started doing this. Now, this is a photo of Ronald Cotton and Bobby Poole. So Cotton is the one who was sentenced to prison for 11 years. Bobby Poole was the man who did rape Jennifer Cotton. They do look similar, but if you really look at them, they don't. And so what happened is Jennifer Thompson, when she did the sketch, and they brought in 6 photos of men, she picked what she thought was the one who looked closest like her rapist, and it happened to be Cotton. And then they brought in the live lineups, and Cotton was in there. Bobby Poole was not in the lineup. And something very interesting that they found in research is 100%, every single person, eyewitness that has picked the incorrect suspect has always 100%, because the correct suspect was never in that lineup. That is a huge research, foundation that you can say, well, 100%. If you don't have the right suspect, our brains, our memory is trying to say, well, he looks the closest like the one. Even when you study someone, when they're up so close to your face with a knife to you, stress and memory will cause you to have some sort of eyewitness false memory. And when you go one by one, it helps you be more certain. So you want more of a certain choice. And sequential one by one photos will help you look at that face, and you have to be 100% certain that's the man that did or did not, and then they put the photo away. And then they come back and they look at another photo. So what has happened is they have shown that the sequential method is the method police departments all over the world should be doing. So Gary Wells did go into the courts, and they just passed, I think it was January 6th of this year, after 34 years, Sally Yates, she sent a letter to every police department in the United States saying, this is going to be protocol. Detectives, policemen will not be clapping or saying, look at number 3. They will be silent. When you have a suspect or an eyewitness come in, you will not have that detective in that room. You're going to do a double blind. You will videotape now. It's very important when you go into trial to show the judge and the jurors how the eyewitness reacted, because that eyewitness, when they see that sequential lineup and they pick the perpetrator, the jurors want to see, instead of just a signed agreement, this is the man who raped me. So it's huge what has happened this year just in itself. Only 20% of the United States has actually put into place the protocol. 80% of police departments are still, they can do whatever they want. So there's so much more that needs to be done. This is just a little bit like in 1989, the first DNA exoneration took place. This is very important because we are sentencing, we are incarcerating a lot of men and women in prison. We're putting them on death row. 20% of inmates that are incarcerated that are on death row are innocent. And so Gary Wells started something called the Innocence Project. And he's trying to, help the people get off of death row. And actually, that's how he started. I believe he was at Ohio State University getting his PhD. An attorney said, I have a client who I believe is innocent. Is there a PhD candidate that would like to help me prove his innocence? And Gary Wells was like, I'll do it. And now that's what he's been doing since the 70s, and he's still doing it. What are we working on now? Double blind tests. That's the Sally Yates, Deputy Attorney General, who did sign the memo out to all the police departments. Well, what does this tell us? What has happened to Ronald Cotton? What's happened to Jennifer Thompson? They wrote a book. It's called Picking Cotton. They're best friends. They spend their entire lives touring, speaking to college students and high school students. And they try to pass policy, and they go to laws, any kind of hearings to share eyewitness misidentification. What can happen? So Ronald Cotton, tells his story, and it's so sad because Jennifer Thompson is still so distraught after all these years that she put, him away for 11 years. And in 11 years, she got married. She had 2 children. And now they're best friends. I think it's great. These are some references. A thank you note to a few of my professors. Are there any questions?
We have time for a couple questions in the back.
If you were falsely accused, you're falsely accused, can you request that they do a sequential lineup? Can your lawyer request that? I mean, if the police department is not.
That's a very good question. You can request anything. As of January of this year, there is some protocol put in place throughout the United States, and they should be doing sequential now. And if they don't, then there's the letter from Sally Yates. I would contact the Innocence Project. They should be following protocol, but this does take time. It took 34 years just to change the law.
Middle table over here. Go ahead.
This is really interesting, Elizabeth. What do you think are the biggest barriers
there should be almost a standard script and standard procedures for these kinds of things, you know, that you can just say, your suspect may not be in this lineup, and things of that type, you know. What do you think are the barriers to implementing something like that nationwide?
Another good question. That's so huge. I truly believe we need more like psychologists and attorneys and more people getting involved and coming together, you know, more of a collaborative work, passing laws, getting this out there. It's so important because what happened is while Cotton was in prison for 11 years, Poole was continuing to rape and murder women. So it doesn't just affect the incarcerated innocent, it affects so many others.
Professor?
Yeah. Has there been any false positives from the sequential therapy?
Yes, there has. There's always issues, there's bias, there's personality, there's all sorts of things that can happen. Ethics-wise, it's difficult to recreate crime scenes, so they create video scenes and they put policemen through these video that's called the Viper system, and they try continuously to tweak every little possible way to get more of the hit ratio, of more correct and certain with the sequential. But we have been able to come up with the research and show the courts and be able to pass a law. So that's good, but no, it's still difficult. There's so many things that come into play. Rape kits, that you have to have them refrigerated, they put them in basements. It's really, there's so many things, you know, that they don't take care of DNA. The detectives who are doing the sequential, you really almost have to have a video camera. I have the entire PowerPoint. This is just a sliver of it. This is 5% of my research. My entire PowerPoint is on my website. This is my website here, ElizabethARuiz.com. I have my business cards and copies of my paper here. Every slide of my PowerPoint, I have a speaker icon, and I've narrated all my research. So you can go to every slide and hear it. My references are on there. But that's such a good question. I believe while we have more research coming in, we'll be able to prove more. But yes, sequential is far better than
Very
simultaneous.
good. Thank you, Elizabeth. Let's
Thank
show our
you.
appreciation. Rena?